How have we not figured out the technology that phones don't have to be on airplane mode to fly a plane? We don't have the technology to just like that not to interfere with our equipment.
Well, they just want safety.
I think they just don't want someone sitting next to you on your phone the whole time. Because you could probably answer the phone most of the time.
It could be, but they always say it's because of the equipment, but I don't understand how that even works. What kind of equipment we're running?
It's RF signals is what it is.
If not enough people put their phone on airplane mode, we're going to LA and we end up in Vegas instead. We're just off, like a slight degree. We're coming into land.
How many times that you don't do it and all of a sudden you bing? Like,
that's my watch.
I got live. I'm live. I got to start answering all the emails and stuff.
Sorry, that was my game. It wasn't I didn't have, I was on airplane mode. I promise.
Yeah. Hey, just landed. Blah, blah, blah. Pick me up. Blah, blah, blah.
I'm on the plane. My phone keeps on saying to me, GPS signal lost. And I'm thinking, who's this idiot who doesn't switch his phone off? Meanwhile, it's mine.
Yep.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 53 of the Slightly Serious Sign podcast. This episode is voted number 1 by this beautiful pillow that I have that's sitting behind me here. So big shout out to Doug for sending us this pillow.
Dougie.
Hey, buddy.
Everyone comments on this pillow. Everyone that sees it always makes a comment on it. So
it's streamy.
It works. It does the job. It seems like the most ridiculous thing, and maybe that's why it works, actually. So I think we're going to start sending them out with Domingo's face for the podcast. That's how we're going to get more listeners.
All right.
Start getting any royalties on that or not?
No, I get nothing.
Yeah,
I'm claiming it was my idea.
All I get is, hey, buddy, how you doing?
And then he's got a smile.
All right, before we introduce him, can I tell my story?
Yeah.
So
I was told that there's a story about my kids that I don't know yet. So
the people that listen to this know that I always say Tyler's kids are a menace. So we had them spend the night at our house. They were spending the night at our house last night. I think they do it every Thursday night.
Mostly.
And we played most of the time. No big deal. It gets to the end of the night, we brush your teeth before you go to bed. So, you go into the bathroom, you get them all some toothpaste, give them toothbrush, or brushing their teeth. Next thing you know, they're both standing in the tub. I'm like, what are you guys doing in the tub? Like, we're brushing our teeth over here. Well, Thea finished early. Like, she's done brushing her teeth, decides she's going to wash her hands. So she gets the soap on her hands, she's washing it. And as she's rinsing her hands, Cove decided that was the time to rinse his toothbrush. Puts it under where she's rinsing her hands. Puts it in it before you can get a hold of him, before you can say anything. He puts it in his mouth. Like, how was that? And the look on his face was like, and as soon as he did it, he's like, and then he just keeps brushing. And then he's going to put it right back in, and she's still rinsing her hands. Like, buddy, wait. So yeah, that's his kids. Like, the look on his face, and he didn't take it out of his mouth either. It wasn't like I took it out, it was bad. No, still in mouth. Worst face in the world, and then it's gonna go right, and then went on to brushing his teeth.
So I always laugh.
So he has a little potty mouth. He has one.
Yeah, apparently. He's gonna know what it tastes like now.
I laugh whenever somebody was like, so we were just talking about, we have a wood stove in our house that we don't use, and we're talking about like, yeah, we're probably going to use it next year, but worried about like our kids burning themselves. And everyone's like, oh, they'll learn. And be like, no, I don't think you understand. It's going to take them like 2-3 times. Like, I don't know what this kid's deal is.
Yeah, like, we don't run ours.
He knows it hurt, but in his head, I think he's thinking, let me try it one more time. Maybe it was a fluke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were playing, like, we had this blanket on the ground, and the kids would get in the blanket, we'd swing the blanket, and most of them just get in the blanket, sit down, not Cove. Full on jump, land on his butt on the ground in the blanket every time.
He doesn't
he jumps, he lands like literally right on his butt every time. Like, just walk into the blanket and sit down, Cove. Nope. Boom.
Every time I hear about someone else's kids having to go to the ER, I just think, I don't know how this hasn't happened yet. I don't know how I haven't been there. I mean, we go there, but not for injuries. I don't know what the deal is.
You got some guardian angels there at work.
Yeah. Like, he's learning how to be reckless, apparently. He's going to have it mastered, hopefully, by the time he gets us to normal age. So, anyways, we have a new guest here with us. So, I'll kind of let him do most of the intro. But Adriaan, thanks for coming out. We appreciate it. You had to fly in for it. So, we appreciate it.
From overseas? Is that what I heard?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, basically over the Hudson River. That's basically overseas. So yeah, thanks for coming. If you want to just do an intro, kind of, who are you, how long you been in the industry, and what's your current role, and who are you working for, obviously?
So I got the invite about 10 years ago. I got on a plane and I flew over to the United States, and here I am. So
what country from?
I'm from South Africa originally.
Oh, really?
Yep. And I knew I was going to be here, so I had to fly over here. And now today I'm here in Michigan, wonderful sunny weather and all that great
I think
stuff.
you can see it on the camera.
What's actually funny is it actually looks like it will be sunny today, which is hilarious because I always tell, especially when someone flies in here and they haven't been here, they're like, what you don't understand is in Michigan in the winter, I think we average, in Grand Rapids, I was just looking at the other day, I think we average like 14 sunny days from November to April.
Yes.
Wow.
So you're in luck. One of
That's why a lot of people have vitamin D deficiency.
Yeah. We don't see the sun.
So before I get any kind of weird looks about delaying this podcast, all kinds of side talk and stuff, I've been with G2G and in the industry for about 3.5 years now. I used to be in business in HVAC, and then of course, I came to the States, and this is one of the opportunities that opened up for me. At this point, mostly involved in project management, setting up projects in the initial stages, and then of course the technical support of it. I'm based in New Jersey, so normally if you call our office line, I'd be the one that you'd be talking to, to guide people through technical stuff and so forth. And of course, then for our distributors, if you need some questions or you've got a project you need some questions with, then a lot of times, people reach out to the office. But I would normally be the one that you guys speak to when you call our New Jersey office. That's my main roles.
Perfect. Yeah.
And then I get to do fun stuff like this. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So the thing to give you an idea, if you're listening, we're already minutes in. I haven't told you what we're going to talk about. We want to talk about kind of the main goal is going to be talking about RGB specifically, but we're going to cover kind of a variety of products here. But kind of, I think RGB is something a lot of our customers seem scared or nervous to do or confused by.
What does RGB stand for?
Red, green, blue.
I'm the one that's going to ask all the stupid questions.
Okay, it stands for red, green, blue, but now it's
a lot of stupid people listen to us, and I need to be on their side today.
Okay.
So here's a trick question. What does red RGBW stand for?
Red, green, blue, white.
Wow.
A lot of people though didn't know that it wasn't white. Like it wasn't.
Yeah, it's like a gray.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be at least, or still is by some of them, but we'll probably talk about that too. But so we kind of want to talk about that. Hopefully the idea with this episode is to get you comfortable enough to at least try it or quote some jobs out. We'll give you an idea of kind of the different types of projects. We were just talking before we started that I had a customer call me about an RGB question, and I had about as surface level of an answer as humanly possible for him. The second he asked the second question, I was lost. I was like, he asked the difference between these two. I knew like basically the spec sheet answer. He asked one more question. I was like, I'm out. I don't have anything left for you. That was it. That's all you got from me. So this will be good for me as well as the people that listen.
Did you do what I do? Dude, that's a stupid question. At least when you're asking me, it's stupid. No, because I'm not going to know the answer.
No, I just did what we talked about in episode 1. I just start making it up. That is true.
That's how you do it.
So now G2G has a whole bunch of stuff they're already obliged to do because I told them it'll work fine.
So the guy ended up buying a toaster for you, right?
Exactly. He's kind of wired in weird. I don't know what he's doing. It's all weird. But no, we had to reach out and I was like, let me get the layout for you and then they'll answer the questions at the same time. So we'll get 2 for 1 here. So it'll be good for me as well as hopefully for everyone that's listening that does any form of lighting or is interested in doing lighting. Hopefully to be comfortable enough to try it. So the first things, if you want to just kind of cover the general like product lines that are available.
Hold on. Let's get into the question that I always want to hear. So do you do a lot of shows and stuff?
We do trade shows.
Okay. So when you go to trade shows, is there a certain restaurant that you love to go to, or is there a certain food that you really like?
Or it can be
that we're not aware of that we need to probably try out?
In South Africa, we've called Mopani worms.
Mopani worms. How is that?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, they're live. They wriggle in your hand. Just
let's go to
like candy.
Oh, wow.
Wait, you eat them when they're live?
Why not?
That's why they're just tougher than us.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you.
I don't think we're going to be able to go to Vegas and ask that and say,
I've gotten
I
a
need
lot
this.
of good food recommendations, and I don't think I put this on the top of that list. It might be delicious.
What is it called again?
Yeah, we might.
Mapani
worms.
worms?
Most people
worms.
kill them and dry them, but that's the boring way of eating them. You know, you want to feel them go down.
Let them go down when they're still.
Yeah.
And he says it tastes
I'm in.
like candy.
Can we get that here in the States?
Yeah,
Probably not. I could probably sell you a bag for about $5,000 or something because I would have to go and get them. But,
That's why.
yeah.
Maybe I got to go. I got to try them in real life.
Well, we got to go to
gotta-
Africa.
That is a long flight. I don't know
Yeah.
if you know this. It's pretty far away.
It's not far from where I'd like to go hunting over there.
Oh, there's a lot of hunting in that region
well,
specifically.
there you go. Well,
Hunting
thanks
trip,
for that little
worms.
tidbit, but I
Well.
think I'm going to pass on that one.
Yeah, I appreciate the offer.
I tried, dude.
Over here,
I
we got
tried.
pizza.
It's not alive.
Chili dogs.
Actually,
Chili dogs.
Actually, pizza is never alive ever. Actually, so that's a win. Anyways, do you
right, I'm
want
sorry.
to cover like the general products? I know you kind of wanted to go over you guys' product lines in general, and then we'll talk about kind of what's available in RGB and kind of the options there.
Okay. So I think maybe before we start, we just wanted to kind of put a disclaimer out there that G2G, of course, we're not engineers, we're not architects, we're not, structural engineers, anything like that. Whatever sort of advice or whatever kind of guidance we give our customers is to help them, teach them, train them and so forth. But it's obviously their responsibility in the end to make sure that they get the appropriate expertise, electricians and all those people, involved in a project. So, just want to put that out there. But, for the best part, when we start looking at RGB products and, lighting products per se, we sort of have three categories, if we can call it that. Right. So the first one would normally be your static, let's say, modules like the United or, wows, those kind of white modules that you put in the cabinet. You got a stick, put it in there, you put the face on. That's the first type of module that you have. The second type would normally be your RGBs. Now they kind of like this, they're kind of the same type of thing where you've got still a thing that pretty much just plugs into the wall and it gives you a certain color. Right, so that would be, a red module or a blue module or a green module. Now, when you have got a module that's got all three of those colors in it, but it can still work on the same principle where it's still just red, green, blue. If you take the red channel and you energize it, the red will light up. If you take the blue will light up, and the same thing with a green. So the RGB system, in that particular sense, is really kind of what we would call the analog controller, right? Because it's just voltage in, voltage out, plus, minus, that's a circuit, and the thing lights up. Now we have got, obviously, you've got a number of products that work on that concept. So you've got your flex, you've got your modules, you've got some wall washers that work on that effect, where you've got normally have three channels, red, green, blue. And once those channels get energized, they light up. Right. And we'll get into the controllers and stuff like that. So that would be the second category of, let's say, color changing lights. All right. The third category is what we would call the SPI or the DMX data driven fixtures. And most of these fixtures actually don't run by the concept of just voltage in, voltage out. You still need regular power, but the control of the actual diodes inside this fixture is being done with microchips. Right. So it's a data signal. It's not just an electrical signal. So you have an underlying current that feeds the modules for it to be powered on. But once they're powered on, the data signal comes in and tells it what to do. So it's actually, in actual fact, it's two systems that control that light, to be able to do certain things. One of the big differentiation factors that you'll see specifically with something like the DMX is the DMX works on the concept of addressability. Now, let's say for argument's sake, you've got a building, right, and you've got 20 wall washers, and you want to do a wash from the left to the right, let's say red to green to blue, whatever. What DMX allows you to do is to give each and every one of those wall washers a specific number in the sequence, and the controller can then pull up, let's say, red, green, blue, an alternate 3-3-3, or have one half red, one half green, that kind of thing. So it kind of gives you that granular control of your signage where it breaks everything down into numbers, and you can manipulate the numbers to do whatever it is you want the sign to do.
So it's the same thing as like when you have these wall washers, for example, and you see a lot of buildings that have different colors. You'll see blue, right? But then when a holiday comes out, like Independence Day or something, July 4th, you'll see red, white, and blue start flashing on these buildings. And I think that's what the DMX allows you to do for cancer, do pink or whatever those holiday or whatever it may be. So that's where that controller comes into play.
Now, it's fair to say that there's a lot more technology, generally speaking, that's been developed for RGB systems because they're cheap. And a lot of times people don't necessarily want, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but people don't necessarily always want that granular control, right? But the RGB, there's some really good RGB systems out there and stuff that's relatively simple to operate and that can fulfill a whole bunch of roles. But particularly when we start looking at modules, and we can maybe look at that later as well, but particularly when you look at modules and you've got let's say a sign that says, whatever, that might have 50 modules in it, to get the various digital effects, or let's say a wash from the left to the right or the top to the bottom or whatever, that's where the addressability of your modules definitely come into play.
Yeah, so when the one we were quoting, he was asking about the difference between is it your Trico model and then Trico DMX? That was what he was asking. What's the difference between these two? And I was explaining him. Okay,
one has 3 more letters.
Yeah, one says DMX and the other one does not. That's the difference. No, so I said DMX is like fully controllable, right? You can make it whatever you want. And I said I understand. The other one is limited. I said, but I don't understand what the limitations are. That's all I know. That's basically my whole answer for him. And he was like, can it do this? And I was like, I don't have the answer for you. I have no idea. But that's kind of what we're talking about, right? Where if there's a limitation, right? Where if you want to do like the red, white, and blue for Independence Day, but you don't need to be specific, right? If you just need to, in general, kind of do red, white, and blue, the regular RGB has that ability, but it's limited, right? So if you want to do, where it looks like the flag waving, which is what we've seen people do with some of these, that's individual addressability, where it's the individual diodes are waving in a certain pattern. And
what you always also find is that, let's say, I've got an application where I've got 3 letters, A, B, and C, and I want the A to be blue, the B to be orange, and the C to be pink, for argument's sake. DMX allows you to make those breaks in the system. Now, that being said, and I don't want to get too much into the woodwork of the mechanics of it, there are sometimes when, you speak to us about a project that you might be doing, and you say, the whole letter can be one color. Then by implication, what we can do is we can use simple RGB, but we connect it to a more complex controller that would run through a device called a decoder, and the decoder will allow us to almost control that as an addressable fixture. So there are some variations when it comes into how we apply that technology to your product or to your project. But for the best part, what we'll say is that the DMX is normally more reserved for things where you want more custom control. You've got a halo lit sign with a face, and you want the face to do one thing and the halo to do another thing, or, whatever combination of effects you can think of.
You see it in Vegas all the time. I mean, you see they use DMX like crazy over there because of all of the waves and the colors and everything like that. I think the biggest challenge right now is that when you say that you see it in Vegas, we still can use this technology for a smaller sign. It's just that people don't really understand that they can. But I think talking about it gives them more capabilities of being open to that idea.
Yeah. And a big part of, I think, if you think about DMX technology, a lot of companies, specifically specific stage lighting uses, yes.
We're just moving towards you.
Towards you, Domingo.
Okay.
Domingo, towards you. Yeah. Because when you turn this way, we can't hear you.
You're good.
Okay.
Then you just keep doing as normal.
All right, cool.
Oh, I got you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. There you go.
So when we think about when we think about the DMX technology in other practical applications, a lot of times stage lighting is probably one of the most common places where they use DMX, specifically for rotating lights, doing all kind of movements and so forth. And that's kind of the technology that where it gets just as much as you would have in our industry. But you're absolutely right. I mean, sometimes people are kind of intimidated by it because they kind of see, these big panels with 500 switches and levers and everything else. And in the signage industry, luckily, we don't make it that complicated. It's much more user friendly.
Yeah, and a lot of these are replacing like old school neon signs, which is kind of a crazy idea that have these super advanced controllers to replace technology that's very, very old at this point. But it's LEDs weren't made to do what neon was made to do. So to do it, it requires a little more complexity than before. It was actually super complex as well. I mean, the breakers and all the stuff we had to use for neon, but it's not as difficult as you might think to get some of these flashing and trailing and all the stuff that we used to have with neon. I think people think it's super complicated because, well, I mean, I'm sure calling your supplier doesn't make it any easier when we don't have the answer for you, because every job is different, right? That's not why we don't know the answer. It's just that everything is going to require a different solution. And when you call us and we're like, we don't know, it's because we've probably done, even if they've done 5 or 6 of these, every one of them was different, right? They required a different module or a different, tubing or anything like
border
that.
Tubing. I mean, I've seen it where border tubing comes into play.
Yeah. And it's, there's so many different options in there that if we were to like give you a direct quote on it, probably when we send it to you for layout, you're going to be like, hey, maybe we should do it this way, and be like, oh yeah, that makes more sense. Right. So when you call and we don't know the answer immediately, it's because there's so many options and there's so much variability that the best option for us is to not quote it for you and have someone that does this for a living do the layout for you. And 1, they're going to pick the correct products, and 2, we're going to make sure we have the right controller, because the cost from traditional to DMX is obviously there's a cost there for that supply, and you don't always need that full control, right? You may think you do based on what you asked your customer, but when you find out to it that it's like, 364 days out of the year, we want it to be, red, white, and blue, or red and blue. And then on St. Patrick's Day, we want it to be green. It's like, okay, well, green's not that hard, right? We can put one in controller in, and then on St. Patrick's Day, you press a button and it turns green. That's not that hard.
Or just put green LEDs in there and just plug a different plug-in.
Unplug this one and plug that one in.
It's just labeled. The plug is literally labeled St. Patrick's Day.
I think it's funny. We've had this almost exact same conversation. Well, one day a year it needs to be pink, or 1 month a year it needs to be pink. Okay, well, you don't have to go to like the high, like to get pink, right? Like you're literally unplug and replug one month a year.
That's a Signman.
Yeah.
I have to say that for a lot of sign companies, you have an opportunity, I think, to sometimes educate customers and to give them options. Because if you think about it, if no one comes to you and says, well, listen, here's the iPod, you can listen to music on it. I mean, you don't know that you need an iPod until you see the iPod. And I think for a lot of sign guys, that's kind of the challenge. When you walk into your customer's business and he says, well, I only want to spend $3,000. Well, are you sure you want to spend $3,000? Because for $5,000, I could probably get you a sign that's going to be 3 times better than what you had in mind. And that's I guess the budgetary constraints that you deal with when you deal with customers, and they say, listen, this is our budget, we don't want to go over this. But at the same time, it's kind of like you walk into the car dealership and you want to buy the car, and the salesman shows you the leather seats and shows you the sat nav, and before you know it, you've got $7,000 in extras. And it's not because you don't want, because you don't want it. You wanted it, but you just didn't know that you were going to look for the extras. And I'm not saying people want to become, these entities that push and push and push for higher and higher sales all the time. But a lot of your customers do want, they do want these features. They would like it when they have it, but if you don't tell them, they will never know.
Well, we've said that. What you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Like you think you know everything until someone says I always go back to TikTok. All of a sudden, there's that one guy I follow. Like, wait, you can use that for this, and then you go out and try it. Man, that freaking works. Like getting 2 buckets apart with air. Like those buckets have been stuck together for 10 years. I've been using them as a double.
Well, I was just going to say that, you know, it also puts a sign shop, it distances them away from a competitor.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you can make a sign and you're using different colors, DMX, and you're showing that, it grabs attention.
Yes.
And as soon as your competition says, well, or a customer goes, hey, where'd you get that? Well, I got it from ABC Signs.
Yeah.
Then they're going to be like, oh, well, I know that they can do it.
Yeah.
So
what I think is funny about the DMX controller specifically is we've quoted jobs on it where someone looks at the regular control and they look at the DMX and they're like, wow, it's X more expensive, right? Like for your example, let's just say $2,000. It's $2,000 more expensive. And that's how they're looking at it, right? They're like, I'm going to spend $500 or I'm going to spend $2,500. That seems ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then their whole sign is like $42,000 out the door. You're like, okay, so it's the difference between 42 and 44.
Yeah.
Like, is your customer really going to care? Like when you're like, I can have regular or I can have everything I want. And the difference is 42 or 44. Like that's how you should be looking at it. Not like it's 500 and 2,500, right? Like you're talking the whole package at the end of it, right? When it's not just, we've talked about this with LEDs, right? Where we were just talking with another one about cost of modules. And we're talking like, okay, it's, you know, whatever, 40 cents versus 80 cents a module. And you're like, you realize we're talking about pennies here. You're talking it's 100% more expensive, but we're talking about 40 cents is what we're actually talking about.
We're talking about a $6,000 sign. We're talking about 20 cents a module. And you're putting, you know what, 100, maybe 130 modules in there. Like, it's the same. You know what? Listen, it's the same people waiting in line at the gas station because gas went down 3 cents. You put 10 gallons in. What did you actually save?
30
and then
cents.
they go in and get a Mountain Dew, and now you just lost everything.
And your car was standing there idling for 20 minutes. So you burned $5 in gas anyways.
You burned more than 30 cents that you saved.
Yeah.
No, just like my wife driving 20 miles to get, it's cheaper at Costco.
Yep.
Oh yeah, you just drove 20 miles, honey.
Yep.
Yeah,
and then you went into Costco.
Exactly.
And you save money buying in bulk.
Yeah,
but
$500 bill later.
you still have 17 packages.
I'm going to tell you a funny
paper.
story real quick. So I went to Costco with my wife. I'm going to tell you, this is how much she goes at. We go into Costco. We start pulling stuff in the car.
She listens to this, Domingo, right?
It's fine. She
Enjoy
knows
the
this
couch.
too. So as we're pulling stuff, I have this cart. She looked at the cart before we got to there and she goes, $700. And I kind of went, what?
Dang.
Went in there, $670. She was $30 off. She goes there too much.
Yes, for sure.
Well, she's a math genius.
I saw a lady when I was at Meijer the other day. She put something, I watched her put something in her cart and you know, they have like little phone holders at Meijer for the cart. Yeah. And her screen was just a calculator. She was typing them all in as she was putting them in her cart. I was like, that's dedication.
Can you just scan them at Meijer?
Yeah.
We're getting off track
Usually
right now.
You have an app, you just scan it. And
anyways,
go right up to the checkout thing, just scan.
So anyways, don't cheap out on your signs when we're looking at total package here. Okay. Yeah. We're not looking at the difference. And I, like we said earlier, I don't think everyone needs to upgrade to that DMX, but I think if you offered it to your customers where they're like, yeah, 1 month a year, I want it pink, or for 4th of July, I want it red, white, and blue. And you're like, okay, what about, you know, all the other holidays or events, or if you're doing a sales event and you want it to flash or blink or whatever. Those are all things that maybe they would use, right? Maybe they won't use it, but I think not offering it to them as an option and showing them what it can do, I think is a detriment to your
the
customer.
the border tube is getting more and more popular. Do you ever want to change it? Or you just want white all the time?
Yeah.
Like, can you go green on St. Patrick's Day? Can you go pink during,
you
know,
I think people need to see it and to understand it. I think that's where the key is that if you don't see it, it's like any document. You can see a document, it just doesn't show it. So that's why we like to attach a lot of videos so that you can actually see it in action.
Yeah. And that's why you see one town do it, then all of a sudden the entire town does it. Like it only takes you to make a couple signs and everybody's gonna be calling you until the next sign guy figures it out.
Yeah. It's not just Vegas. by the way.
No.
Like this happens in
it's
small areas, right?
yeah.
Where it's the reason it happens in Vegas because everyone's trying to one up each other.
Yeah.
If you do that in a town, that same thing happens, right? The hardware store sees a new sign go up and then the store across the street's like, shoot, I better put something up. They put one up. They put one up.
The thing with a lot of, I mean, when we think about the range of products that a lot of sign companies can pick from, I mean, you've got modules, you got wall washers, you got flex, you got spotlights. I mean, you got so many different things to pick from with our new EQ tape. That many times, I think we sometimes get these calls from customers that says, listen, I'm looking at your website. I have got no idea what I'm supposed to be doing here. And I said, of course you don't.
That was me last week.
But there are, I mean, and when you're looking at certain applications, certain products are going to work better for those applications. And, some guys have been in the industry for many years. They know, listen, we do these modules. This is what we want to do and so forth. But every single time you do something with a new product, the ball game and the rules of the game changes. Tyler, just something coming back to what you said earlier. I don't think we should be looking at DMX just as this exclusive system for a guy that wants a Christmas tree in front of his business or anything like that. One of the benefits of the DMX when we apply through our controllers is that, you can control your signage through, let's say, your phone, through a Wi-Fi app, right? That's local to your sign. So if you're within 50 feet of your sign, you can, go onto your app and change your programs, which a lot of times you don't always have that functionality with some regular RGB systems. And particularly if the system gets bigger, as you start scaling certain designs, it gets really tricky to work with analog technology because now you have to have multiple controllers, you have to have boosters, you've got to do a whole bunch of stuff. And that's kind of where we sometimes incorporate our DMX controllers, where we'd say, okay, we will take the RGB, which is supposedly a simple system, but we'll sort of run it through that gateway where it will become part of a more complex system that you can either run through a cloud or you can run it through whatever you need to.
Yeah, I know we worked on a job, I believe it was a casino, that the lighting was super simple, actually. Mm-hmm. Like it was basically like white and red. I think their colors, it might not have been red, but it was basically one other color, basically. And it was consistent throughout the year. But for whatever reason, the way they wanted to turn it on and off or control it, they couldn't do it through an analog controller. So they set up a DMX system, even though they didn't use any of the programs. They were literally using it exclusively for the way to turn off and on. And that may be something you run into too, where it's like, hey, how do you want to control it? Yeah. And like you said, I'm sure a lot of you have played with the remotes for any RGB that used to, especially old school stuff. But the remote technology for that stuff hasn't really changed much, right? Where you press the button and nothing happens. Right. That's just the limitations of the technology, right? You have to get it right. Yeah. And we're still working on the same system. It's not like any other one is going to be better than what is available. It's just, that's what it is. It's just a remote with a signal. And if you don't get it right, you're going to press that button 5 or 6 times. Yeah,
the infrareds, unfortunately, I think they're always going to be that, regardless. On one of our smaller controllers, sometimes it uses these CR225 batteries. This one, the same as you use in your remote for your car. Yeah. And if you same 3-volt battery, if you upgrade it to, let's say, CR2032 or something, better range. So. But it's still infrared. I mean, it's going to have its limitations. And I think that's one of the things specifically when it comes to the user interface, which is extremely important. When you've got a customer who just paid $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 for their sign, and they have to try to figure out how to change it from one color to the next, and the remote is not working, dude, they're angry at you because now you sold me a piece of junk. I paid all this money and I can't change this thing. Yeah. And that's a lot of times where we would normally integrate that, say, for example, something like our Talon 2 controller, which would be, the Wi-Fi option where your phone pick up the Wi-Fi signal and you can change it, when you stand there at the sign to a different program. Because that's a big part of the user experience in the end. Look, if they don't like the signs, they don't like the experience of interacting with it, then they might not call you again. Yeah.
Yeah, I think controlling it is a big part that I don't think it's talked about enough during the process, right? It's like, hey, how do you want it to look? But the second question is, how do you how do you want to be able to change it?
Right.
Because especially with those remotes, right? If you're putting it in like a monument sign, that remote's never going to work. You're going to have to stand 1 foot away from it. You're going to have to open the sign to change it. Like that's not a good option. But if you don't ask those questions, right, they're going to be standing at their sign 6 months from now and then calling you like, hey, I need it to be green today and it won't come on. So can you come out here and open the sign so I can turn it to green? Not a great solution. So yeah, it's something I wouldn't have even thought of to ask like, hey, how do we want to control it, or how often do we want to change it?
Now, Tyler, another thing that I just want to touch base on, specifically when we start thinking about, and I'm sure this is not only true for our controllers, but when you start thinking about the placement of the controller itself, right? A lot of times you have to think of it as the brain of your operation. So if you think about it's the brain of your operation, is it a good idea to put it 125 feet up in the air in a sign that you have to use a bucket to get to? Probably not such a good idea, right? You'd be better off running it down 50 feet or 100 feet and have a weatherproof box, or put it inside or something like that. And this is kind of, it's probably true for majority of electronics. I mean, up here it gets pretty cold, and most electronics, I mean, they're pretty durable, but you put anything outside or you put it close to the elements, you run into issues. So that's kind of one of the things that we normally sometimes run into, when the customer says, well, I can't change the program because the controller is, all the way up there and I don't have my bucket truck with me. So that's it's just a good thing if you can put it inside and have access to it.
Makes sense. So we kind of talk about the difference between DMX and standard RGB, as well as some of the options out there. The thing I want to talk about, what are some of kind of the limitations of using RGB versus traditional like white signage as well?
The limitation with RGB many times is when it comes to specifically RGB, not RGBW, but RGB. One of the limitations that you are going to be dealing with is the white. Right. And as you guys probably know, I mean, when you look at dialing in, let's say, the color white, if you do red, green, blue, the lower temperatures, let's say 25, 3,000, 3,500 kelvins, normally those temperatures are kind of more yellowish than anything else. So they're pretty easy to dial in with an RGB. And it's from there, it would sort of go up. And you can get a pretty decent white up to about 5 to 5,500 Kelvin. Let's say neutral white, if we call it that. The moment that you're going to cool white, which is, let's say, in excess of 5.5 to 7,500 kelvins, now it becomes very blue. And we actually had a customer of us a while ago that had two signs in front of their building. One sign was, pure white modules, something like the Ampro, the Wows, whatever. And the sign next to it was an RGB sign. And they were complaining that the RGB white was off. And I said to them, that's what it is, unless you actually have an RGBW system that has a white diode in it, you're going to have that bluish kind of white.
Yeah, and the colors that you're talking about that are hard to hit are the standard, the most sold white colors, right? Between 65 and 7,500 Kelvin.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that struggle with a standard RGB product, correct?
Yeah.
The benefit is there's other options besides just traditional RGB, correct?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you can RGB white. Is that going to be the new standard? What's your opinion, I guess?
It's kind of like, yes, I think when the manufacturing cost of it is going to be sort of on par with regular RGBs, because once you have to think about it, when you manufacture a circuit board that has an RGB, right? It has X amount of components. You add white to it. Now suddenly you've doubled the number of components. I mean, I'm not an electronic engineer, but it's a lot more components when you add that extra channel, because now you don't just have 3 channels or three channels to deal with. Now you have 4 channels to deal with. You've got different power requirements. So it's a whole different kind of ball game. And that's even when we think about modules, generally speaking, that's why the Trico 2 is actually a pretty popular module, the Trico 2 RGBW module. Very popular because I think you've got your true white in there, plus you got your RGBs. And I think they're reasonably priced. They're not cheap, but they're reasonably priced. You can still apply them in a lot of signage, where you don't need to, break the bank.
Yeah, makes sense. So we talked about kind of where to place the controller when we're installing these things. What are some other like issues with complexity or that come along with installing like some of these bigger RGB systems?
Yeah, is it a wiring? Is there a distance? Is there come into play?
And I would almost want to use the analogy of gardening. You know, if you're a gardener, you know that you have to take care of the soil, you have to take care of the nutrients, you have to have good seeds and so forth, right? So with DMX, it's kind of the same type of thing. There's certain basic rules that applies to, you know, to a lot of DMX systems. So DMX systems is obviously, like we said earlier, has an underlying power requirement. Right, and the power requirement sort of lays the foundation for how the light is going to, or how the lights are going to operate. If you take a DMX light, normally you hook it up to the power, it's going to light up, right? It's not going to do anything, but it'll light up. And then the data signal needs to be transferred, you know, bearing in mind that you have to have enough voltage. Right, or the voltage is sufficient for the data signal to be transferred all the way to the last part of your string. Now, when we think about the complexity of it, it is complicated. If you say tomorrow, listen, I'm just going to buy a bunch of stuff from Wensco and I'm going to get it in boxes and I'm going to try to figure this out. Good luck. You know, I'm not saying anyone's stupid, but if you don't have some good advice or you have some good guidance, you're going to struggle. You know, and there are a few basic things that we can normally cover, you know, during the install. It's sort of where you normally introduce your PowerPoint, where you're going to introduce your data, what kind of addressing you're going to do, and so forth. But what we found is in the majority of cases, let's say you've got a project, and we like to do this with sign companies. You got a project, you say, listen, Adriaan, I've got a project. I'm busy with XYZ. Here's my drawings. Here's my measurements. What do you guys recommend? And we put the whole layout for you together with all the components. And you call me and say, listen, I've got the stuff out of the boxes now. What do I do? And then we can say, okay, let's refer to the layout. The layout has a wiring diagram for you. So it can show you what wires go where, you know, where you're going to input the power. And then we might say, okay, let's do the first section, right? And you do that, you test it. If you're happy with that, you can copy that same principle to the rest of your signage.
So can you walk me through kind of, say someone's completely new to this, right? They maybe have done a couple, you know, like sign comp cabinets is a good example in the past, but they've never done any RGB. What does that look like if they're like, hey, I want to do an RGB sign. I have no idea what I'm doing. So they're going to reach out to us, which we would reach out to you that says like, hey, we have the layout for the sign, but we want to do RGB. Kind of what does that whole process look like? So in the perfect world, right, you would normally have that conversation with your customer first and say, okay, Mr. Customer, what do you want? You know, do you want color changing things? You know, how do you want to control these things? How do you see in your mind what the sign is going to look like and what it's going to be like when it's done? And once you have that information, now you're probably not going to get all of it if you don't know the systems that well, but you're going to have enough decent information to say, here's my measurements, here's the colors that I want, this is what the customer is looking for approximately. Then many times they can speak to you guys or they can speak to us. And from there, we will then recommend a product. Let's say a module or a wall washer or a whatever, doesn't really matter. And once we have that, we will do a layout and we will get the quote together of, you know, bill of materials. We send that to you guys and you guys, you know, send it out to the, you know, to the sign company. Now, when the sign company gets their stuff or they're sort of in the pre-planning phase, then they can pick up the phone and say, they can say to us, listen, you know, how do we do this? How do we wire that? And so forth. How does the programming work? A lot of these things, it's like I said, there may be 4 or 5 basic rules that you want to stick to. And if you do that, then you can probably apply that to a lot of the DMX fixtures that we have. Makes sense. So I think, especially if you're going to run into one where what it sounds like the customer wants to do is super complex, what you're going to find is that this isn't, not only is it not the first time, it's probably not even under 50th time that they've done this super complex thing, right? We realize it's relatively the same procedure for all sorts of different type of lighting, right? Just different colors in the same formation as before. So it may sound like it's complex, but it's probably not as big of a deal as they're making it out to be. I know that you guys do have the ability to do something like if it's something that's never been done before, they could program it. There might be a cost to that, but it's pretty unlikely that no signs that have gone out in the market have what you're already trying to do. So I don't think you have to be nervous. Like, oh, I don't know if they're going to be able to do that.
Right.
It's probably doable. It's all relatively the same.
Just need
system.
the right equipment. That's all.
Correct. Yeah. So
And the right programming.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll give you a simple example here. So, for example, we've got a let's say design, an apple, and you just want to say, for example, do a border around the apple. Now, you can do it in one of three ways, right? One would be just one simple color, white or green or blue or whatever. Second option would be an RGB, right? So the whole apple all around would change red, green, blue, whatever. Third option would be a DMX DMX flex, which would go around and you can have a chase of a blue or orange or whatever. It's still the same sign. Now, if you as a sign company gets in front of your customer and say, Mr. Customer, these are the three options that you have. Where do you see yourself? And you might say, okay, well, price me out on the fancy apple and the RGB apple. You'd still be able to sell the RGB apple. If you didn't say anything, you probably would just sell a white apple and, lose half the money that was on the table anyways.
Yeah. And I think showing them just some of the projects that have been done with that type of thing, like with the chase and all that kind of stuff, and showing them, the one we always talk about is like 4th of July. Like that's a big one for a lot of people, but just showing them those options sometimes might be enough to be like, well, I only wanted a white one. That's actually all I actually cared about. But just giving them like, hey, it's not something we have to do, but let's look at it and see if it's something that's in your budget, and then we'll move forward with it.
Yes.
But,
yeah.
Well, alongside that, what are kind of some common places you guys are seeing RGB signs go in? So whether that's, like gas stations, I know like sports stadiums are obviously putting a lot of that type of stuff in, but where are sign shops should they be looking to start offering this to their customers, knowing that this is a pretty common application?
I think one of the challenges that we have with specific color changing signage is, of course, local laws. Some counties are so strict on this. I mean, you can have white and that's about it. You want red, you have to write to the governor and that kind of stuff. And that's it. It's your council. You run it the way that you see fit. And some of them have got a lot more wiggle room. But that being said, I would think, for the best part, when we start looking at RGB projects and we start looking at how we approach this and the applications for it, casinos, obviously, sports stadiums, schools, corporate buildings, municipalities, particularly sports events, sports bars. I mean, so for example, like Small Chevelle. Think they're a burger chain that we've done a lot of their stuff. So when you think about the type of project that you're going to get involved in, a lot of times is going to be something where, the customer might have high expectation from the beginning. And the funny thing about it is that, say, for example, you deal with hospitals and you do hospital signage. If you've done one hospital, these people talk. And before you know it, you get a call from a second hospital and say, oh, by the way, you did a great job on so-and-so, would you want to come and talk to us about it? And this is what we've seen, even car washes. Some sign companies get involved in car washes. I mean, there must be a lot of money in car washes because, I mean, you see so many of these things popping up, right? But some companies specialize in one type of customer that they service, and that's the industry that everyone knows them and say, you know what? Yeah, if you've got a hotel, you need to call John because he can help you. He had five guys down the road. So it's and some markets are obviously a lot harder to get into than others. But hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think those are perfect examples for
I'm
what we're
seeing
kind of
it in
looking
gas
for.
stations right now.
That's what I was saying.
I am seeing border
stores.
tubing, RGB, and gas. The other day, I went to the gas station. I saw it was green. Next day, I saw it was blue, and I'm like, they have to have it.
They're probably plugging them in every day.
There's probably a guy in the back just playing with the. Hey, what's this remote go to?
Yeah. He was actually trying to unlock the alarm for the building and like, red, green, red. I'm in the wrong. That's what I'm trying to do is turn the alarm off.
Hey, pink! What the? Hey, let's leave it there.
I think that specifically, I think it's such a big market because there's so many bad gas stations now that I think people are like, you're getting off the highway, you have two options.
If it's,
you're gonna just go to the one that's more lit. That's literally the answer. Like, it's literally like this one. If I have to go in and use the bathroom, I'm just picking the nicest looking gas station from the outside because I'm gonna assume
your
the
wife
gas
picks
station
the nicest one.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm picking the closest one. I'm picking the closest one. But most people, are taking whatever is available, right? They're just like, I'm looking for the brightest one I can find because it's usually the safest bet in terms of like, they're probably going to have what I want versus like more of the dimly lit ones. I was just thinking about this I drove by a business that didn't have any, it was actually Westgate bowling alley. As I'm pulling up, I'm thinking, well, it seems weird that they're closed on a Wednesday, but the parking lot was packed. There was just no lights. So I just assumed they were closed. And I think stores are running into that same thing, right? If you don't have the right lighting, like at night, especially if you're open in Michigan, if you're open till 6 p.m., you better have lit up signage because it's dark. But I think it's a missed opportunity just realizing like literally if you don't have enough light on your building, the assumption is that you're just closed. Like you may have an open sign on your door, but if you don't have the right light, it's just like, oh, they might not be open.
Do you guys notice, you probably do, but I know that there's a lot of people that just don't. And what I mean by this is that I've gone to a gas station. I've gotten gas there many of times. I drove by it and I kind of went, this is really lit up. What? I had to go inside. It is bright. I can see everything. I'm like, new ownership? Because no, we made some changes. Yeah. And I kind of went,
Everybody's kind of mimicking for around here it's the J&H oil ones. Yeah. Right? Everybody's mimicking the J&H oil because they super lit inside, they super lit outside. Yeah. They have that faux neon above their coolers that you can see from the outside. It's all glass. Yeah. So you can see and it looks nice. And, so then you see everybody else around here trying to mimic, like they redid the gas station right up the road here to mimic the one that came down the street. So like you're seeing everybody do it now. Yeah. And it is crazy bright. Like I need it because I can be able to see the pump.
Yeah, and I'm the sign guy going, what kind of lights do we sell those?
I'm looking for the little plaque of who did the canopy.
Yeah, that is funny. Yeah, that is a pro tip if you're looking for someone to help you with installs. If you drive into a gas station, there's usually a plaque for who will service it, which usually is who installed it. Yeah, and so if you need help, just look up those names on those pumps. It works pretty well. So it's our hit list. So I appreciate you guys putting that out there so we know who we had to talk to.
And you better be buying from us. Wensco.com.
Thank you.
Good ad, Domingo.
Appreciate it. I don't have a ton of other questions. We'll just kind of go through them here at the end. But can you just go through some of like the cool projects that you guys have been able to work on that people at least would know or can look up and see?
Yeah. What was your most favorite project, I guess?
Well, this is one of those $1 million questions when you start thinking about the people that you deal with and the projects that you get involved with. I mean, because we are obviously in Jersey, there's a lot more Jersey projects that I've been directly involved in. But just a few that's kind of that I was looking at. Jefferson Building in PA, the MGM Casino in PA, the Ocean City Casino in PA, Jersey City, Gino Steaks.
Gino Steaks.
Yeah. We actually
talked about worms. We got Gino Snakes now.
Yeah,
steaks now.
Steaks, yeah.
We started with
now
food about worms.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yep.
Steak? What?
We actually did a great job with them. They use the Magic Flex, addressable Magic Flex on the outside of their building. And Gino's has all been one of those places that's always been over the top. I mean, you see them from 2 blocks away, so I think they put a lot of money in that and it looks really cool. But the funny thing about a lot of these projects is that it's not necessarily always the size of the project. It's kind of just how it turns out. We sometimes work with companies where, we were working with Aerosigns a while ago, and people just come up with some really cool concepts, and you think, man, I really enjoy just doing this job, because you kind of see what people can get up to. I think for the best part, we like the bigger projects. Obviously, there's more money in it, and there's also a chance to work with real professionals. Which is another part. If you don't have to be a big company, but if you're a professional and you pay attention and you do that preemptive, calls and you do a proper planning and so forth, then those are always the enjoyable ones to work with. And many times those are the ones where the customers have the best feedback as well. Because it's been smooth from the beginning to the end.
Smooth. Yeah. So what you say that, what are the questions that the sign shop should be asking the customers to make sure that they're, one, that they're getting the right products, but two, making sure the customer knows what's available, right? Like you talk about like border tubing. I think that's something when you're doing signage is something that nobody ever brings up, right? It's like, hey, we're putting a new sign versus offering like, hey, is there more than just your sign we could do? So what are kind of the questions that a sign shop should be asking those customers to make sure they're getting the right products and making sure they're giving them every available option?
So I would probably start off with maybe the baseline is if they're not familiar with our website, g2glighting.com, G number 2 and glighting.com. Kind of just look on there first, because we've got channel letters, we've got architectural lighting and so forth. So many times that will sort of give you some sort of an idea of the product types that you can pick from. Now on there, we've got some project videos and so forth, but that would be sort of the baseline as far as just getting familiar with the type of lights and type of things that you have access to. And once you sort of know that and you start speaking to your customer, you're kind of in a better position to say, okay, you know what? If you want a catalog, you can get a catalog from us or whatever and say, you know what, this is what we have available to do, say, for example, your exterior signage. Do you like this or that? Now, that also being said, if you're not 100% sure and you're going to speak to your customer says, this is pretty much the broad outlines of what I want to do, pick up the phone, you speak to us and say, listen, I've got this customer, he wants to light up the sign this way, that way, and we can then many times make some kind of a recommendation. Because you think about, and not to veer off track here, but you think about something like, say, wall washers. Now, wall washer, typically you would think, okay, goes inside of the wall, shine it up the wall, light it up, or whatever. Some people use it for interior signage. There was a bank that used the green wall washers on the inside of their building, and at nighttime they just put these green wall washers, and it fills the whole inside cavity of the bank with this green glow. I mean, it looks beautiful. And you wouldn't even think about using it inside until someone, decide, hey, you know what, this might be a good idea. Or, sometimes people build these cabinets. We had one customer that built a sign that was probably, if I have to guess, about 25 feet long by, I'd say, about 12 feet high and about 6 feet wide. So almost like a monument type of sign. And instead of putting modules or sticks in it, he just stuck a bunch of wall washers in there. So those are the kind of options, and those are the kind of solutions that sometimes our team can come up with. And I'm not saying we always know some sign guys are brilliant with, coming up with new
it's
ideas.
Adults doing arts and crafts. They're a little different people.
As you say.
Yeah, but I think
way more creative than us.
You have to realize what is happening around you to know what to offer. We talked about this with convenience stores, that one of the big things in some of these urban areas with gas stations, one, obviously they'll light them up as bright as they can get them, but two is lighting up the entire perimeter of your building. And we were finding out is they were actually doing it to prevent homeless people from loitering around because they can't sleep outside your building when it's so bright that it's not worth sleeping there. And then the same thing like you're talking about with banks, like the big thing lately with any of these stores in these big cities is they light them up day and night, right? They don't want them to be dark because they don't want to deal with people coming in, right? If it's bright, they don't want to come in. They'd rather go into a dark building at night. So that is what's happening, right? So if you aren't aware of that, to know hey, do you want to light up your building at night so that you know it's less likely thieves will come in and try and steal stuff from you? If you don't ask that question, they might never have thought about it and then think oh yeah, Chase Bank down the road is lit up. I know in Rockford, the bank, they just have the regular lights on, just the regular ceiling lights are on the entire time. They never turn them off. Yeah. And if you don't realize that's happening, you're not going to offer it to them. And just saying hey, have you thought about this might be enough to get the business. And I think a lot of the big sign shops, that's what they're good at doing is saying hey, you want a sign? Here's 4 other lightings that we've done for similar projects. Would you like to do one of those? And taking a $10,000 job and turning it into a $15,000 or $18,000 job. But you have to know what's available, right? If you don't know what's available, you're never going to be able to offer
What
it.
what we've seen, what some sign companies do, which is, in my opinion, actually a very good idea, is they build prototypes. So say, for example, you like the Flex product very much, or you like the module, United module, or the Tricos, or whatever. Even if you just build a small little prop, say in your shop, or something that you can take with to show a customer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because to your point, and I think you said it earlier as well, I can give you a catalog and I can tell you what it's like, or I can show you one light. And I mean, that's why shows like the ISA are so popular. I mean, because people like to go and see the lights and they like to see what's out there. So
Yeah, 100%.
Well, some lights. Some lights you go around the corner and you're like, geez,
Yeah.
where's my sunglasses?
Yeah. We complained about municipalities limiting what types of signage you can do, but I've driven down the road sometimes where you thought like somebody probably should have put a limit on this one. This is a little out of control, I'm like flashing my lights at the sign like, hey, your high beams are on, dude. Turn your sign down. That's out of control. Yeah, that's perfect. The last question I had, specifically with RGB, is the maintenance on RGB signage any different than standard white signage if people are familiar with it?
I think, typically, I mean, all signage, as we know, would be subject to, rains, floods, fires, electrical storms, that kind of stuff. But the modules themselves are actually relatively, they stay there. They've got 50,000 hours, warranty on them. So, it's definitely not a technology that would require more maintenance than a typical system. The difference with the DMX is then, and this is kind of why I would normally say, put your controller inside, because if for argument's sake, like some of our controllers actually run on SD cards, so you don't have to have internet connections and cloud connections and all the other stuff. All the programs on the SD card makes it very simple. It's localized, plug it in, and it works. Now that SD card, if you got a voltage spike or anything like that, that card can become corrupted, right? So I would normally say, have an extra card, tape it to the controller, and if there's any issues and the customer calls you out, to switch out the card, because that's sometimes the only thing that's necessary. But generally speaking, I think the thing with customers that normally buy RGB or DMX systems, because they spend more money, our experience has been that they normally care a little bit more. I'm not saying other people don't, but they care a little bit more about their company and about their image. And it's a very good opportunity for you to say, listen, for X amount of dollars, once a year, we're going to come in, we're just going to go through your sign, check the connections, see that everything is fine. Just as a preventative measure. And the stuff that normally is going to go on signage would typically be stuff like, the wire nut that you thought was tight, 2 years from now is not going to be tight anymore, or it's going to move, or the power supply or whatever. But it's not really something that you would normally say that's going to be more maintenance intensive than most other systems.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what I want to know. But
Do you have any samples that we can show, or?
Oh yeah, I think so. Do we plug some stuff in?
Can we plug some in?
Yeah, well,
so at this point, if you're listening on audio, thanks for listening.
Oh,
we'll see you
that's
next
right.
episode. I'm just kidding. But come over to the YouTube. We're at the 60-ish minute mark, so just scroll to that part and you'll be able to see all the samples. But if you're on video version, we did bring some samples, so you'll be able to see kind of some of the options here. I think when we talk about addressable modules or individually addressable, I don't think that makes any sense to anybody. So hopefully we'll have some of that samples, but it's something you're just gonna have to see. You're gonna have to show your customers, or you're gonna have to show them videos. G2G does a great job at putting all of their projects out on social media as well as on their website. So just scroll through there.
I saw them on TikTok. Commented too.
You saw them on TikTok? That's funny.
They're on
I haven't
TikTok.
seen them.
Yeah, I commented too. Whoa, you guys are on TikTok. That's amazing.
They're high tech, dude.
Yeah.
Right. So what we've got here is simple RGB, right? And
can you see it on that camera in front of you?
We've got red, green, blue, black.
Can you move that can?
All right. So this is a simple RGB system. This is what we're saying. If you light up, if you hook up the red wire to the power, it will light up. So this is one of the simple systems that we talked about. Now, this is an analog controller. It's got all obviously built-in modes. So as you can see there, I can select red, green, blue, white, yellow, and so forth. And for some applications, it's going to be okay. But since, Tyler, what you were saying earlier about the infrared remote, not a very popular option with people who want something that's going to have to be controlled 50 or 100 or 200 feet away. All right. But you got a bunch of options. And I mean, this is, like I said, this would normally be a controller that's available only for the standard RGB type of fixtures. You can't run a DMX or anything like this. This is just plain. And this kind of stuff, there's many of these type of standard controllers out there.
So I see that we have Cat 5 here connections.
Yeah.
So are you able to run, usually Cat 5, you got like a 300-foot distance, and then it kind of loses its signal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is that kind of what they would actually run this into that box, the Ethernet in?
So this is actually, the reason why they have these connections here would be for us to connect multiple controllers.
Okay, that's what I was going to.
So I've got A, B, and C, and I've got one controller for each.
Okay.
Again, like I said, infrared remote, very limited in scope and very limited in the type of colors that you want. So if you want a specific green or specific blue or orange or whatever, this is not going to happen with this controller.
So if you chain them together, is it turn that controller to blue and all of the controllers turn blue?
Slaves. Yeah.
Okay. So it does chain them together.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, if this is what your customer wants, your customer says, listen, I want this thing to be behind my desk. I'll have the remote with me. I'll change it to red, every Christmas, and then next day green or whatever. That is one of the options that they can do. My recommendation would normally be, if you are going to speak to a customer, trying to sell them on the Wi-Fi, trying to sell them on that customer interface. Because the infrared works, but, the Wi-Fi just works so much better. All right. So this is the standard RGB. Now, of course, this is a piece of flex that could have been RGB modules, that could have been, any sort of RGB fixture that you have. Wall washer, it doesn't really matter. Same principle applies.
Modules
are coming.
About to get bright out here.
It's about to get bright. Those are RGB modules.
RGB white.
Yep.
Holy. It's got a pile. Right. Throw that pile up here.
We're going to blow out the camera here in a second. I can't even see it from here.
Okay, so maybe I'll just do one at a time. So this is our controller. This is our standard Talon 2 controller, and this is our standard Talon 2 controller. So I'm just going to do this, right? So you can see how those lights turn one after the other, right? There you can see. So every single one of these lights would be individually controllable, right?
Move it that way.
All
right there.
All of them in the same color, right? Or we can have variations of colors. So, for example, something like that shows you how the gradient effect sort of works from the one module to the next. And these are the Trico minis. Normally apply to very tight corners, tight kind of signage, and so forth. But that's that's a whole point of addressability. That you can sort of do these chasing effects and so forth, right? For signs where you are going to be requiring that type of thing. I just want to show you guys the Trico 2s.
Whoa.
Thank you.
A lot going on with those lights.
Yeah.
It's not
per module.
Say again.
You're controlling them per.
Yes.
Not per module, even per LED.
Yes.
Per diode.
Sorry. Per
right.
diode.
So here we can say. So this is here you can see where we kind of have control over every single one of these modules by themselves. All right. Now. That would obviously be, full colors, red, green, blue. Now, the white that you see there, if you look at this, now this is a test mode, but normally when these modules are in operation, The module that we use for the white is the center diode. And this is kind of, remember when I was talking about the RGB white and the pure white, there you can see the difference. That's RGB white and that's pure white.
So to explain, so this is the Trico 2 RGB,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
So that's where this might get confusing for you because you're used to the other ones where the number is the number of LEDs on here. So you're looking at Trico 2 and there's 3 LEDs on this module, but the reason
Dang
is
it, Sky.
because there's 3, yeah, can count. The reason is because the RGB is two diodes. The middle one is white. So there's only 2 that are lighting up, hence why it's called Trico 2.
Yeah, 2 color, 1 white.
Yes.
Okay, I gotcha. I'm with you 100% now.
So what you'll see with these particular modules is that when we don't need white, we don't have to run the white on the center diode. It's redundant in that case. But if you have got a sign where the customer wants to have a white color, then you have got that center diode. And of all the DMX modules that we do sell, these ones are by far the most popular. We've got a one that's bigger than this, a Trico L, which is like double the size. But these ones, I like these ones best. You get them 60 in a bag, 1 power supply to 1 bag. They're very easy. I mean, they've got these QIS connectors where you can sort of, hook them together, daisy chain them.
Yeah. But how does that controller work? You got pre-programmed stuff?
Yes. So this is one of the things that we normally, with all the fixtures that we have, and it doesn't matter whether it's modules or wall washers or, D50 pucks or anything like that, all of them have got 20 free programs that would normally be part of your package that you get regardless. So there'd be static colors. So I can, for example, if I look at the static colors, I don't know if this program is going to have this on there. Probably not.
Twinkling.
This might be a different program, but normally what you will find is that you would have the first 8 to 9 colors would normally be statics, red, green, blue, orange, whatever. And then from 9, 10, 11, and so forth, you're going to start having more more flowing effects and so forth, 4th of July, Christmas, and so forth. The whole idea that we normally try to push for here is customizability. So if your customer wants a specific blue or a specific orange or specific flowing effects or whatever, then, that's where these modules really come to the front.
Yeah. So I think what you might not even notice when you're watching on video is that the flow pattern on this isn't module to module. We set it, but I don't think we're showing people what it is. It's literally going diode to diode. So you can watch the color change between them. Where that might matter is if you put these really close together, you'll get like the neon chase effect versus it feeling like it's jumping from one to one. It's literally going to just flow straight across the board. So it's pretty cool. They're all individually addressable by diode, not even by module. So
It's like Christmas.
I like those ones. That's a good pool room one.
Yep.
yeah. Well, it's cool. I mean, it gives you a good demo of what it looks like and how it works and all that.
And the
good
idea
stuff,
of the controller, like it's not, don't be scared of it. Let's sell it.
Yeah. It seems pretty simple to me. So, well, perfect. That was all I had. So I appreciate you, bringing the demos, flying out here, taking the time to do this. It's been awesome.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. We definitely want to sort of thank you guys as well, for our partnership with you as far as the 3D printers. I know there's a bunch of 3D printers that's going to come online soon. We're doing some training for some customers, and even the United module that I know you guys are very excited about. I know the United has been doing very, very well, and a lot of it's got to do with a bigger lens size, gives you better visibility, a bigger circuit board size, which kind of reduces your heat load, and it's an economical module as well. So it's great to work with you guys, and I think even as far as the newer technology goes, there's a lot of stuff happening in the module market. Last year, we reinvested close to about 40% of our profits back into R&D.
Good.
Because that's what we do. We're definitely at the forefront of the LED developments in this particular industry. it's definitely, we set the benchmark for a lot of other people to follow. I mean, the stuff like the Flex, for example, we had it years ago, and now it's sort of getting to a point where a lot of people are copying that. But you know what? That's nature of competition. But we're always pushing to stay ahead of, as far as that goes. We've got the EQ tape, which is something we're really excited about. That's going to be a really cool thing for a lot of people who work, particularly used to work with a Flex product. That's going to be very applicable in some places. And then the ISA. We definitely want to see as many people as possible in the ISA. We're going to have a great booth and, kind of show our 3D printers and show you everything else.
The last time you had a picture of Doug on your booth, is my picture going to be up there this time?
Number one sales rep.
Listen, I know.
Number one sales rep. Is that, are we going to go back to that?
Yeah, I should be number one sales rep. Put my picture up there.
Yeah,
get rid of Doug.
we'd have to take that up Sky, I think. So
all right, well, I'll actually text him as soon as we're done here.
Let him know.
He's probably he's probably sleeping well right now.
Probably.
Yeah. He's just thinking about going to bed right now.
Well, I don't know. Sky's one of those guys. Sometimes I'm amazed. We have got some stuff going on, and it's 11, 12 o'clock in the morning, right? So it's obviously 1 a.m. in their time, and I would just put something out there, and he would respond, and I'm thinking, what the heck, dude? Yeah. How are you still awake?
People don't understand how absolutely funny he is too. Like when he gets sending you memes and stuff, it is absolutely hilarious.
He sent us some pretty funny videos. Yeah, I agree. So, yeah. Once again, thanks for coming out. We appreciate it. If you guys have any questions on anything you saw, reach out to us. We can get a hold of you guys as well. We love to quote some RGB signs, so love to see more of them out there.
Yeah, let's do it
in our ear. So yeah, thanks.
Excellent.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time. So
wait, Doug. Hey, buddy. I'll see you in February.
Bye now.
See ya.
See ya, guys.